Hi everyone, it's Heidi from My Reading Life, and I'm here today to film the mid-year book Freakout tag, which I don't know if I've done it in the past before. I know I didn't do it last year, but I just felt like doing it today, so here I am to do the tag. And I'm just going to get into it because I'm during my lunch period and I want to get this done quickly. So the best book that I've read so far, I had a really difficult time. I've read a tremendous amount of excellent nonfiction already this year, so I couldn't decide between two of them, so I have two to share. My favorite book is How the Word is Passed by Clint Smith, A Reckoning with the History of Slavery Across America. This is a history of how different places in the United States and other areas around the world deal with slavery and talk about slavery. I thought it was excellent work of history. Clint Smith is a really, really good writer. And this is still in the BookTube Prize. So definitely an excellent book to check out. The other book that I would consider my favorite so far this year is Under a White Sky, The Nature of the Future by Elizabeth Kolbert. And I just recently read this book in May. This is about how it takes examples of different ways that humans have tried to fix environmental problems that they have created or are in the process of trying to fix problems when it comes to climate change. Really excellently written. Elizabeth Kolbert is a master at writing about science and making it understandable and interesting. I love this book. So question 2 is best sequel you've read so far this year. And for me, I read lots of sequels because there's a bunch of different series that I'm involved in, mystery, fantasy, romance, all different things. But I am going to choose Forgotten in Death, which is the most recent book in the J.D. Robb Eve Dallas, which is a futuristic police procedural series. And that is book number 53 in the series. So it's far along the line of the sequels, but I just love Eve Dallas and the crew that she surrounds herself with. I think that they're really fabulously written police procedural mystery type books. Question 3 is new release you haven't read yet but want to, and that's a book I just purchased this past weekend. Just came out in 2022. This is You've Changed, Fake Accents, Feminism, and Other Comedies from Myanmar by Pyae Thet. And I heard Jenny King talking about this essay collection on her channel, and I found this used for $6 hardcover. Doesn't even look like it was read, so couldn't resist that one. Question 4, most anticipated release for the second half of the new year. And there are two that I am particularly excited about. The first is An Immense World by Ed Yong. I love Ed Yong. I loved his I Contain Multitudes. Doris has been reading An Immense World in an advanced reader copy from NetGalley, and I'm super jealous about it. Super jealous. And I can't wait to get a copy for myself. Also, the latest Louise Penny book in the Inspector Gamache mystery series will be coming out the end of the summer or the beginning of the fall, and I'm always excited for a new Inspector Gamache book. Question 5, what is my biggest disappointment of the year? And there have been a few that have disappointed me, but I think this one was my biggest disappointment. The Ungrateful Refugee, What Immigrants Never Tell You by Dina and Nayeri. I buddy read this with Britta a few months ago, and I was disappointed in this book because the author does not tell us why she did things that she did or how she felt about things that were done to her. It's a very she's distanced herself from her own story, and for a memoir that's really odd. I loved the aspects of this book that talked about the refugee experience and what different people experience as they cross borders and all of that. But in terms of her own story, I've just felt this distance from it, and I never really understood why she made the decisions she made or how she felt about them. So that was a big disappointment to me. Question 6 is biggest surprise, and that is a book that I read while on vacation earlier this year, Razorblade Tears by S.A. Crosby, which is I guess a suspense thriller book, I would call it, about two fathers who are both ex-cons, and they go after whoever killed their sons who were married. The two fathers had been estranged from them because they could not accept their sexuality. And but after the two sons are killed, the fathers pair up, and sort of it's this buddy thriller type story, but it's the two guys who are the buddies are not necessarily the good guys. I loved that book. I ripped through it. I could not put it down. I read it all in one day. It surprised the heck out of me how much I enjoyed that book. It's super violent, super violent. So if you do not like violence on the page, do not read that book. There's a lot of just really nasty behavior, nasty people, but I couldn't put it down. I thought it was so well written. Then question 7 is favorite new author, and there can only be one choice for this for me, and that is Juli Berwald. I read 2 of her books this year. The first was Spineless, The Science of Jellyfish and the Art of Growing a Backbone. And then more recently, I read Life on the Rocks, Building a Future for Coral Reefs by Juli Berwald. So this is her latest book, which just came out this spring, and this is her older work, and both of these, of course, deal with marine issues, which I love, but both are written so well. Juli Berwald is a very excellent communicator of science information. I found both of these books fascinating with what I learned about jellyfish and coral reefs. I found them really interesting in terms of talking about what the current science is in both of these fields and the individuals involved in doing that science. And I just think Juli Berwald is an excellent writer, and I am very much looking forward to seeing what she writes in the future, because I'm sure it is going to be fantastic. Okay, question 8, newest fictional crush. Well, I could have gone in a lot of directions with this, but I decided to pick Charlie from Book Lovers by Emily Henry. I thought Charlie was like the best romance hero that I've read in a really, really long time. He was just so, he seemed in the beginning when you first met him, he's very off-putting. He's very almost mean, you're like, oh, this guy's a jerk. And then you start to understand his soft and gooey interior, which is not visible to everybody on the exterior, and why he is the way he is. It's been shaped by obviously past experiences. And he was just so fabulous. He acted so fabulously towards the heroine in that story. I just thought he's wonderful. I would love to know a Charlie. And then question 9, very similarly, asks what's my newest favorite character. And for that one, I am going to choose the Count from A Gentleman in Moscow by Amor Towles, which I read a couple months ago. And I loved the Count in this book. I love this book. This is a 5-star read for me. And the Count he's got a dry humor, and he's such an interesting person. He's known so many interesting, he's lived through so many interesting events and known so many interesting people. And having the story be told through his eyes was just a delight. Basically seeing the history of Russia in the early part of the 20th century through his eyes was a delight. I loved him. I thought he was wonderful. So, the Count. Then question 10 is book that made you cry. I cry at everything. I cry at books. I cry at TV shows, movies, TV commercials. I cry at print advertisements. I cry at letters to the editor. I cry to everything. I cry if somebody's telling a story that I find particularly emotional. I cry. I have no shame about it. I cry all the time. So I've probably cried at half the books I've read this year. So I had to really get which ones did I cry the most at? So for that, I picked Heartstopper Volume 4 by Alice Osman. The Heartstopper graphic novel series is just so heartwarming, and it just makes me cry out of sheer delight. The characters, I just love them. I want to hug them all. Wonderful, wonderful collection of graphic novels. I highly recommend. And then another one that I just couldn't not mention, a middle grade novel, Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry by Mildred Taylor. Basically a modern classic. And I listened to it on audiobook, and I cried. I cried really hard multiple times in that book. So yeah, that one definitely made me cry. Question 11, book that made me happy. most books make me happy because I love to read books. So they just make me happy by virtue of being books. But a book that made me laugh a lot was Wow, No Thank You by Samantha Irby. Samantha Irby is she's a writer. She's written a bunch of memoirs, but she's also writes online for various outlets, and she is a comedian, and she has written for TV for a comedy series. And her humor is like very much in my wheelhouse. I really enjoy her books. I think this book, Wow, No Thank You, is the third book of hers that I've listened to on audio. She reads them herself, and they are superb. They are superbly well done. If you like humorous memoirs read by the author, check out Samantha Irby. She's fantastic. And then question 12 is most beautiful book that you've bought this year. Well, I've already talked about Juli Berwald, but Life on the Rocks is absolutely gorgeous hardcover. I love this picture of the coral reef on the cover. But since I already used it, I picked a second one, and that was the book Why Fish Don't Exist by Lulu Miller, which we read earlier for the Book Naturalist Book Club, and I love the gold foiling on this book. It's a dark navy blue with this fish drawing on the cover, and it's all outlined in gold foil. Beautiful. Love it. And then last but not least, question 13, books you need to read by the end of the year. Of course, I don't read for a job. I read for fun. So obviously nothing I have to read, right? But I do have projects that I'm working on that I feel an obligation to read. So I'm involved in judging for the BookTube Prize. So obviously any books I get assigned for the BookTube Prize, I am going to be finishing by the end of the year. And then the Book Naturalist Book Club books that Doris and I host, we've got 6 more months of Book Naturalist books to read, and those are all books that I will be finishing by the end of the year, obviously. And there are many more projects that I'm sort of working on, and I'm in hopes to finish, but nothing that I feel an obligation to finish the way I do for the BookTube Prize and the Book Naturalist Book Club. So those are the books that I need to finish by the end of the year. Okay, that's it. That's all the questions. I hope that if you want to do this tag, please consider yourself tagged to do it. I know it's been going around like crazy. Lots and lots and lots and lots of people have done it. I love people's answers to this particular set of questions. I think it's really fun and interesting. So please do the tag and let me know that if you've done it. Otherwise, I will talk to you all later.